Welcome to this reading. This is a short sketch of a few experiments made by Clement Archer, late lecturer on chemistry, Dublin, and at present a physician at Bath, to ascertain the nature and properties of two springs of mineral water, lately discovered by Colonel Riddell in the garden of his cottage called Cambray Cottage, Cheltenham. Printed and published 1806. To the Right Honourable George Ogle, Knight of the Shire for the County of Wexford, in the Irish House of Commons for 27 years, representative for the City of Dublin in the First Imperial Parliament, and one of the Governors of the County of Wexford. My dear Sir, permit me to dedicate the following short tract to the oldest and best friend that time has spared me, as an offering at the shrine of friendship and as a small memorial of the respect and veneration in which I have always held the classic refinement of your taste, scholar, the unsullied purity of your honour as a gentleman, your incorruptibility, integrity as a representative of the people, and your inviolable attachment, conspicuous at all times and in all circumstances, to our constitution in church and state, as established, I hope, unalterably and irrevocably at the glorious Revolution, can I flatter myself that I can be considered worthy of your attention or acceptance, with the most perfect regard and esteem. I have the honour to be, my dear Sir, your most obedient servant and most sincere friend, Clement Archer. A short sketch of a few experiments and nature and properties of two springs of mineral water. Situation of the springs. The pumps which produce the water are in the garden of a neat lodge called Cambray Cottage, at present in the possession of Colonel Riddell, which is situated on the north side of the little river Chilt, about 150 yards south of the principal street of Cheltenham. The soil through which the water rises is sandy on the surface, but the substratum is a bed of argillaceous blue marble, upwards of 20 feet deep, in which several marine productions, such as bivalve shells, Cornua ammonis, covered with sulphate of iron, and a pair of decorous horns encrusted with ferruginous matter, have been found, and intermixed with veins of reddish ochreous clay. From a thick bed of coarse gravel, which lies immediately under the stratum of marl, the water springs are copiously as to fill the well to the height of 12 feet in the course of 8 or 10 hours. The discovery of this water in September 1804 was entirely owing to chance. The then orator of the cottage, having occasion to sink a well to supply water for the ordinary purposes of his house, contrary to his expectations, found that the water, instead of resembling that of the spring in the adjoining premises, was possessed of a peculiar smell and taste, a circumstance he was at first studious to keep secret, because, having built the house for the accommodation of the company who visit Cheltenham, he was afraid that he should be known that if he was supplied with water of a suspicious quality, it might interfere with the letting of the lodgings, and because he was just at the time of the point of disposing of the concern to the present possessor, to whom the public are indebted for the discovery, that, instead of being unwholesome or disagreeable, the water is a pleasant and salubrious chalybeate, and as such he drank it himself, recommended it to several of his friends with advantage. Having occasion to visit Cheltenham in the month of May last, I was merely to gratify my own curiosity, and to enable me to satisfy some friends who were inquisitive to be informed concerning the nature and properties of the water, and not with any view to publication. Induced to make a few experiments on the water, an account of which, incomplete as they are, I, at the request of my friend Colonel Riddell, now commit to the press, for though I am far from considering them as anything even approaching towards a perfect analysis, yet I am satisfied that what I have done will be sufficient to apprise the public that the water seems to be as likely to prove efficacious as the treatment of several diseases, highly difficult to cure, as any of the more established chalybeates and the United Empire. The experiments alluded to were made in June last, in the presence of a considerable number of the most respectable water drinkers at that time in Cheltenham. But as a second spring of similar water has been discovered in the same garden since that period, I submitted the water of both pumps to the following series of trials, with the same tests or reagents, on the 30th of July last. Temperature. A very sensible thermometer made by Fastener London to Fahrenheit scale shewed the temperature of the water nearest the brook, which it may be necessary to observe is under cover in one of the out offices belonging to the cottage, to be 47 degrees at 8 o'clock in the morning on the 30th of July, while that of the other pump, which is open to the influence of the sun in the garden, fluctuated from 48 to 49. This slight difference, however, I imagine, is to be ascribed solely to the circumstance of the former being under cover, while the latter is exposed to the action of the sun's rays. For I am informed that the water rises from pretty nearly the same depth through the same kind of soil in both wells. Odour. The water of the spring nearest the brook, with fresh drawn from the pump, emits a faint sulphurous combined with a strong chalybeate smell, both of which are disputed by standing a few hours in an open vessel and by boiling. The hepatic odour is less perceptible in the water of the pump in the garden than it is in the laundry. Colour. The water of both pumps, when fresh drawn, is perfectly transparent, but after standing for a short time in an open basin, during which it may be observed to detach globules of air to the sides of the vessel and to emit them from the surface of the water, it gradually precipitates a thick ferruginous sediment, which is at first suspended in and diffused through the whole mass of the fluid, but it soon falls down to the bottom of the vessel and leaves the superincumbent liquid clear and pellucid. Taste. The taste is strongly chalybeate, followed by a sensation of ruffiness, astringency, or what may possibly be more expressive of the sensation, metallic stupicity. Specific gravity. Not being provided with the proper apparatus, I was prevented from determining this point with the degree of accuracy I could have wished, but from a few trials which I made, by weighing equal measures of Cambray water and of that of the chalybeates in Barrett's Field, I am inclined to think they do not differ such as to specific gravity, and it has been ascertained by Dr. Jameson that of the latter spring at the temperature of 47 is 10,002. Experiments with chemical tests or reagents. Experiment 1. A single drop only of tincture of galls, having been let fall into a large tumbler full of the water fresh drawn from each of the pumps, a beautiful dark purple cloud began to diffuse itself in and to float through the water, which gradually subsided in part, in the course of a few hours, to the bottom of the glass in the form of black powder, while the remainder continued to be suspended on the surface of the fluid as a black film for several days. These appearances were rather more striking in the water of the pump in the laundry than in that which is in the garden, from which it may be inferred that the former water is rather more strongly impregnated with iron than the latter. The difference, however, is so trifling that it's scarcely necessary to be adverted to. Experiment 2. On mixing a few drops of the prussiate of potash with a wine glass full of each of the waters, a dark azure colour was instantly produced, and after the mixture had stood for a few hours, a dark blue powder was precipitated. Experiment 3. Both these experiments were repeated upon water which had been boiled, but neither the tincture of galls nor the Prussian alkali produced any change of colour in or precipitation from either of the waters in this state. Observation. As tincture of galls and the prussiate of potash tells us that infusion of galls tinged purple 15 gallons of water, in which only 1 grain of vitriol of iron was dissolved. Observation. As tincture of galls and the prussiate of potash are the most sensible tests with which we are acquainted for the detection of iron in solution in water, it is evident that both the waters in the garden of Cambray Cottage are strongly chalybeate, and as the experiment upon the waters, after they had been boiled, shews that the water is enabled to retain the metal in a state of such minute division of its particles as to be invisible only through the intermediation of a volatile or elastic substance. I made the following experiment to determine what the nature of the intervening elastic fluid or fluids might be. Experiment 4. I added a few drops of tincture of litmus to a wine glass full of each of the waters, fresh from their respective pumps, which caused a beautiful reddish purple tinge to spread itself throughout the water wherever the tincture passed. Observation. The change of colour indicates the presence of carbonic acid gas, formerly called fixed air, partly combined and partly semi-combined, for we are informed by the accurate, ingenious and indefatigable chemist, Mr. Kirwan, quote, that if the semi-combined part amount to 1/6 of the bulk of the water, the redness will be so much the more distinct as the bulk of the air approaches more to that of the water or exceeds it. Thus waters containing aerated earths or aerated iron hold fixed air, partly combined with the earth or iron, and also some excess, which Mr. K looks upon the semi-combined because it enables the water to hold the earth or iron in transparent solution. So the waters of Sageschutz, though they hold both aerated lime and aerated magnesia, and consequently both combined and semi-combined fixed air, yet as the semi-combined parts amount to only 1/6 of the bulk of the water, infusion of litmus is not reddened by it. This infusion is scarcely reddened by the waters of Enheim, which contains 6 cubic inches of fixed air in 48 of water, that is 1/8 in being semi-combined. I have adduced this argument from the work of my learned and much respected countryman, to show that the waters of Cambray Cottage contained a very considerable portion of semi-combined fixed air, in addition to that which is employed to enable the water to hold the iron in solution. Experiment 5. The addition of lime water, or that of both the springs in the garden of Cambray Cottage, renders them milky. Boiling, however, destroys the milkiness in an instant. Observation. These phenomena are an additional proof that these waters are plentifully supplied with fixed air, which is dissipated by boiling. Experiment 6. Letters written with a solution of Carissa acetate become of a pale yellowish brown colour on being suspended over a vessel of Cambray waters, exposed to warm sunshine. A proof that they, in addition to the carbonic acid gas, contain sulphurated hydrogen gas, formerly called hepatic air. Experiment 7. A solution of nitrate of silver occasioned a cloud which was at first white but in a few minutes became dark purple. Experiment 8. A few drops of aqueous solution of acid of sugar being mixed with these waters instantly exhibited the appearance of white streaks wherever the solution passed through the water. This experiment shews that these waters hold calcareous earth in the transparent solution. Experiment 9. Solutions both of pure potash and pure ammonia produced white precipitates in each of the waters, which declare that they both contain magnesia. Experiment 10. A solution of nitrate of barytes being added to the waters occasioned no change whatever in them, which is most decisive indication that they are not impregnated with a single particle of vitriolic or sulfuric acid, as it is more generally called in combination or otherwise. Experiment 11. Soap curdles on being mixed with these waters, while they are both cold and fresh from the spring, but after they have been boiled they make a pretty uniform and smooth looking lather. Experiment 12. Green tea on being infused with these waters while cold becomes blackish, but after they have been boiled, which I have shown, deprives them of the air and iron, or at least precipitates the latter from its chemical combination with the water. They make very good tea, of the same colour as if it had been infused in pure distilled water. For the same reason, port wine and brandy, which have been kept long in an oaken cask, are blackened by the addition of a cold carbonated chalybeate, but are not affected by waters of this description after they have undergone the process of boiling. Thus we see not only galls, but all other astringent vegetables are good tests to discover iron in water. Here ended my experiments upon these waters, which though, as I have already said, I by no means look upon as sufficient to enable me to determine the exact proportions of the gaseous and solid contents, yet they enable me to declare that they are as pure and as good as chalybeate, and we are acquainted with. In this assertion I mean to confine myself to the chalybeates of Great Britain and Ireland, the analysis of which have appeared in print. They may, I may induce to think, be said to hold an immediate rank between the Dr. Saunders called simple and highly carbonated chalybeates, and is to say they appear to contain rather more carbonic acid in proportion to their iron than the Tunbridge water, less in proportion to the iron and the Spa and Plymouth waters. The discovery of them cannot therefore fail of being the utmost importance to the invalids who are naturally visiting Cheltenham, for their tonic and invigorating powers seem elocuted to correct or prevent the liberating effects which sometimes succeed a long protracted use of the purging waters. Dr. Saunders has declared in his essay on mineral waters that all the efforts which mineral waters can produce in certain classes, genera, species and varieties of this case, which are highly refractory and difficult of cure, may probably be commanded by the two springs of Cheltenham and Bath, but had learned Dr. been acquainted with the chemical analysis of Cambray Cottage water, even in the unfinished state in which I ventured to lay it before the public, I am induced to think he might, in several of the diseases at least, have confined his observation to the two kinds of water now to be met with the Cheltenham itself. As this is not a tract or a practice of medicines, but a simple and unadorned detail of chemical facts, I shall not enter minutely into an account of the various cases to which the Cambray Cottage water is particularly applicable, but shall content myself with the following fact, and I have observed it to have been particularly serviceable in cases of dyspepsia and several other complaints which arise from loss of tone, either of particular organs or the system in general, in which we use the words, unfortunately that's unreadable, as a tonic, diuretic, and diuretic. It operates as a very gentle stimulus and constitutes a mild but active medicinal compound well calculated to strengthen the stomach and promote digestion, to cleanse the first passages, to purify the Charlene lymph and clear the whole glandular system. By uniting with the bile and other elementary fluids in its passage through the intestine, it stimulates the glands, which are dispersed upon the surface of the intestinal canal, to pour out their contents, by which it in some measure deluges the biliary ducts and the excretions of the spleen, pancreas and other viscera. It likewise generally stimulates, excites and ultimately strengthens the urinary organs and gives tone to the lacteals and absorbent vessels which are distributed upon the coats of the intestines, and by innumerable mouths take up the nutrition parts of our food and convey it to the blood and make them perform the functions. As an external application, these waters may be advantageous. Use cold as lotions for several affections of the eyes, such as ophthalmia membranium, ophthalmia tarsi, and as lotions also for certain obstinate, dry, brainy, hepatic eruptions on the skin, and as injections in leukorrhea, in which last disease their internal exhibitions may only prove highly beneficial. It has been rightly observed by that judicious practitioner and justly celebrated teacher of the practice of medicine, Dr. Saunders, that it is a question interesting not merely to the chemist, but to the practical physician, to have the quantity of iron as well as the mode of combination in chalybeates ascertained, and the utmost impossible degree of exactitude and precision, as no medical man can be more aware of the fact than I am. It was my intention to have provided myself with an apparatus to which I could have collected and measured the gases and determined the solid contents of this water. But time will not now admit this. I must therefore postpone this important part of the analysis until some future opportunity. But in the meantime, I must beg leave and repeat that from comparing the experiments which I have made upon these waters, with trials exactly similar in their nature on the water at Tunbridge by Dr. Babington, on the Crescent waters at Harrogate by Dr. Barnett, with the waters of Castle Connell and Baby Spelling in Ireland by Dr. Rutty and others, I think I am warranted to having said that the newly discovered water of Cambray Cottage at Cheltenham is equal to any of them in its chemical composition, and cannot consequently fail to produce similar effects in the cure of several diseases to which such chalybeates are usually applied, under which conviction I am only recommended them to my friends and patients, but have drunk them myself with greater advantage during the great part of the season. Thank you for listening to a short sketch of a few experiments of 2 springs of mineral water. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, please like, share and subscribe, and I shall see you again next time.